we're going to deliver a letter to Governor Northam, and I'll read it for us. Governor Northam, we are contacting you again to remind you that there is only one answer that will save Virginians from the well-documented harms of the Atlantic Coast and Mountain Valley pipelines. Stop them from ever being built. While the two bills you recently signed into law, SB 698 and SB 699, give the Department of Environmental Quality stop work order powers, they conveniently limit these powers to land-disturbing activities, which the DEQ has defined in such a limited scope that they do not even include the hand felling of trees. These bills also make it possible for a pipeline company to resume construction as soon as the company submits written corrective measures and the DEQ approves them. Thousands of documents and a wealth of hours of expert testimony have proven that the plans submitted to date for these pipelines are inadequate, yet the DEQ approved them anyway. The most recent were approved without public input. Under these bills, the DEQ could easily issue a stop work order for positive press coverage, then continue to approve inadequate plans regarding the pipeline, and they could continue to do so without public input. These two bills alone are not an adequate response to the grave threats of these pipelines. When interviewed about the bills, you praise their ability to empower the Commonwealth to halt construction on the pipelines if there's a serious threat to water quality. The pipelines themselves are a serious threat to water quality. On top of that, they will not serve any public need or interest. You also said, from the Blue Ridge Mountains to the Chesapeake Bay and all the rivers and streams in between, our water quality is of paramount importance to our health and our economy, and I will protect it as long as I am governor. If you stand by your own words, you must prevent any construction of these pipelines.
Yes.
Further, Dominion's ACP LLC has already been cited for 15 violations of state water control law while tree felling. Despite this, they've asked to extend their tree felling past the deadlines put in place as critical protections for wildlife, some of which are endangered species. This demonstrates the pipeline company's lack of regard for our water, wildlife, environment. You must not allow any future tree felling. Governor Northam, please keep your promises to protect Virginians, their property rights, their water, and their environment. We again ask you to do the following. Immediately halt the felling of trees along the paths of the MVP and ACP, and do not allow under any circumstances felling past the deadlines. Reinstate the State Water Control Board's ability to have input on the certification process and the public's input over the erosion, sediment, and stormwater plans impacts on the water certification process should be included, as supported by public statements from the SWCB at the December hearings. Rescind the memorandums of agreement where Governor McAuliffe signed our state away to EQT and Dominion for $58 million for the ACP and $27.5 million for the MVP. These agreements were made without public notice and do not provide any funding for the localities along the pipeline paths. Direct the DEQ to perform site-specific permitting as referenced in the enclosed letter you sent the agency on February 14, 2017. And we're going to enclose that letter that he clearly asked for site-specific permitting and that he's not backing up now. Match your opposition to offshore drilling to another example of ruinous fossil fuels projects, the fracked natural gas Mountain Valley and Atlantic Coast pipelines, and sever your relationship with the ACP applicant, Dominion Energy. Again, the only right answer is to prevent construction of these pipelines. We implore you to do so.
Yes. So we're also going to deliver a letter to the Attorney General, who has the power to intervene with this process too. And the letter we're sending him today says, "We return today to ask you, as our Attorney General, to stand up for the rights of Virginia landowners, for our Commonwealth's environmental health, and for the existing legal review process that should have been followed for the Mountain Valley and Atlantic Coast pipelines. The hand felling of trees is an erosive land disturbing action that must be halted until full certification has been received. We ask for your immediate intervention, as only weeks into the tree felling process, ACP LLC has been cited for 15 violations. letter, we're going to include the letter from DEQ in case Attorney General hasn't seen it. He'll have a copy he can keep. As the ACP and MVP would introduce over 1,000 miles of sediment dumps and herbicides into waterways, miles of mountaintop removal, abuse of eminent domain, loss of tourism revenue, and pollution-emitting compressor stations into our Commonwealth, we ask you, Attorney General, using your legal authority to challenge FERC's authorization for tree felling in the court system. 2, declare that the DEQ did not prove reasonable assurance that waterways would not be impacted. 3, instruct the DEQ to reinstate the State Water Control Board's ability to have input on the certification process. You legally represent both agencies and can intervene so they comply. And we also ask you to challenge the legality of the memorandums of understanding that Governor McAuliffe signed with ACP and EQT that release them from any liability above the amounts listed. They were made without public notice, and they do not provide any funding for the localities along the paths. Attorney General Herring, please act in the best interest of our health and safety now. And so at this time, we want to turn it over to open it up for any words you might like to share.